I change your bum life. You fight me, it's a celebration. When you sign to fight me, it's a celebration. You ring back home, you ring your wife. Baby, we done it. We're rich, baby. Conor McGregor made us rich. Break out the red panties.
Yo, 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 welcome back to the fifth round. As always, your boy, Stephen Moustaris. And man, I wanted to talk about one more fight before we get too crazy. I know I just posted the video of Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and Kevin Holland, and how I kind of think whoever loses that fight might end up retiring from the UFC. And I know we're sitting there, Steve Wonderboy Thompson's 39, it makes sense, but Kevin Holland's only 30, so it doesn't make sense, but I kind of explained it a little bit. But I mean, usually when we're sitting here going into these fight nights, I'm usually sitting here kind of not crying, but a little upset, like boo-hooing myself, because I'm like, man, I was really looking forward to, because we get these stacked pay-per-views, and then it seems like the last couple months, the UFC's kind of just put cards together and just do a fight night together. And although I do love watching them, and I'll watch every fight card just because I love fights, but you know, and these are the fight nights that you usually, you know, you get the no-namers in there, but these guys are always in there trying to make a name for themselves. So, you know, they're trying to become fan favorites. So, you know, they're going to either be finished or finish, you know. So it seems like usually those fight cards are, you know, got a lot of high like crazy moments, high entertaining moments, but you know, the name value isn't the greatest, so the numbers aren't the greatest. But then, I mean, you look at this damn card, and I think we got like 14 or 15 fighters that usually are probably on the pay-per-view main card. And honestly, I was looking through this fight, the names on this list, like, dude, this could be a pay-per-view about 3-4 years ago. So, I mean, you got my girl, like, not kicking the night off, but basically, Amanda Hebos, she's taking on Tracy Cortez, who's a well-known name. She's looking for her first finish against Amanda Hebos, but Amanda Hebos, my lady, if you ever see this video, I love you, girl. But like, seriously, I don't think she's gonna win. I think Amanda's gonna get that done. And you got Darren Elkins, Mark Diakase. I fucked that name up for sure, but you know, my boy with the red mohawk, I love him. Michael Johnson, Clay Guida, Angela Hill, Nico Price, Kyle Dawkins, Eric Anders, Jack Hermanson, Sergey Plavovich, and then of course he's taking on Tai Tuivasa. But you know, Bam Bam. But this isn't the Bam Bam I want to talk about real quick. I really think us as fans of the sport, it's our job to bring these certain scenarios up. Because every time we're watching the NFL or the NBA, you know, there's always a new stat. Like, oh, Steph Curry, the first one hitting 5 threes in the game of the 30th game of the year. He's the only one to do it 5 straight seasons. Nobody else has ever done it. Or they do these stupid stats that, like, nobody gives a fuck about. Like, oh, Joel Embiid's the first player to get 10 rebounds, 10 assists, 10 turnovers, and 10 points ever in the NBA. You know, like stupid shit like that. So here's my job, I almost feel, like us as fans. This is our job to bring up some stuff. And I'm going to take the focus over to the other Bam Bam of the fight, Bryan Barberena, as I think we're sitting into some big territory here, guys. Hear me out here. I think this run that he's got right now in the last like 5 years, the people he's been fighting, he's like, there's only one person I could think of that I could even come close to comparing him, and that's the run of 2005 Randy Orton, aka the Legend Killer. And I just want to run through some lists real quick of who Randy Orton took out in this time. And I know you guys probably remember. If you guys like WWE, I get it. If not, totally get it as well. And I haven't watched it in years, and I'm always the first person to sit here, and whenever anybody tries to compare WWE and UFC, I get really fucking mad, or MMA in general. It's like, hey man, one's real, one's fucking not. But you can't deny that Dana White and the rest of, you know, Scott Coker and the rest of these guys that are running MMA organizations have definitely sat there and took about 10 or 12 items off the list that my boy Vince McMahon has done over the years to really promote the business. And I'm sitting here, Randy Orton, 2005, he's like maybe even a little 04, he's leaving the Evolution, babyface, youngest champion of all time, all this shit. So they needed a new route. He didn't want to be in the Evolution anymore, so they tried to do this thing where he was like threatening Undertaker's undefeated streak. So, you know, so he became the Legend Killer, as a lot of people remember, because he took out the likes of Hulk Hogan. Even though Hulk Hogan won the match, because Hulk Hogan's going to always win, he's a legend, he's still technically, they kind of made it look like he destroyed him, and the Hulk Hogan like got killed by him, basically, like his career. Mick Foley, Dusty Rhodes, Sergeant Slaughter, RVD, Rob Van Dam himself, Ric Flair, Harley Race, and then even Roddy Piper in this route to get to the Undertaker. And yes, he ends up losing the Undertaker, but these names right there, that's like 7 guys right there that Randy Orton took out. And it starts making me think a little bit. You know, although it's not fair to kind of compare because the WWE has a fight night every Monday or whatever, every Friday, whatever it would be. So it's like 4 shows a month, and then you got to add the pay-per-view they do. So it's like 5 times they get to perform compared to, you know, the one time in 6 months that the UFC fighters get to do. But let's look at Bryan Barberena's stats real quick, because Bryan Barberena, since, I mean, good Lord, I think it was 2014, 2015. Yeah, 2014. Let's look back all the way back then. He takes out Joe Ellenberger, who, by the way, at the time was only he was 15-1, and that's Jake Ellenberger's brother, which is ironic because he's about to be named here in the next couple minutes. But Joe Ellenberger, 15-1, was killing people, and then Bryan Barberena finished this boy, knocked him out in the 3rd round, and the dude literally has not fought since 2014. And then we go, and this isn't, I know Joe Ellenberger's not really necessarily a legend, and some of these names aren't legends, but the high level, I mean, MMA is harder to beat people and to retire them, especially at a younger age than it is for WWE as old people, but I will get into it. So 2016, he takes out Sage Northcutt, who was babyface of the UFC. Everybody was hyping him up. He was one of the biggest hype trains ever, and I think the guy's literally only fought twice since then, and he's lost both times. So it's like 2016, kicks him out of the UFC, basically arm triangle round 2, and he was piecing him up on the feet. It was disgusting. And then he goes out. Here we go. Jake Ellenberger's brought back in. Here's a legend. Jake Ellenberger, he knocks him out round 1 in 2016 or 2018, which was he took out Joe, his brother, and then takes him out. And then clearly 2022, we see the beating of Matt Brown and Robbie Lawler, which, I mean, those 2 names and Jake Ellenberger, at least those 3 right there, that's the equivalent of them. Like, I mean, those guys were legends of the sport. And yeah, at their time, even though they might have been only 30-something, you know, they are at the equivalent of like the WWE age of Hulk Hogan, Mick Foley, Rob Van Dam. And here's where I find it funny. If this is where I'm thinking the UFC is trying to make him the legend killer, because now this weekend he's going up against RDA, Rafael Dos Anjos, who, legend in the fucking game. I mean, but this man, we just seen him take a bad beating against Rafael Fiziev just a couple months ago in the summer, beginning of the summer. And man, I'm just saying, Bryan Barberena right now has a strong chance to become 2005 Randy Orton or the legend killer himself. And I get it, Bryan Barberena's older than Randy Orton was at that time, but still, you know, like I said, you can't have them fight 5 times in a month like these guys can in WWE. So I don't know. I just think it's pretty fucking cool. I think it's dope for Bryan Barberena, especially because he's a fan of the sport. Every time he has a post-fight interview, he's always talking about how much he loves his the guys he's like fighting, like especially Matt Brown and Robbie Lawler. He was like, man, it was like a dream in there. Like, and he loves the chaos and every fight. Yeah, he might not be the greatest fighter in the world. He's gonna kick the living shit out of me and whoever's watching this. But in the UFC, I mean, he's not the greatest fighter like when it comes to the high level. But the boy always brings the fight. He's got the dog in him. He's not going to just be finished easy. And you got to love it. And yeah, I think this is a really hard matchup. I think this might be where RDA might be the Undertaker for what Randy Orton's was, where Randy Orton fell short against the Undertaker. And I think RDA still is a dog. Like, I think that man is like the Tim Duncan of the sport, if I'm being honest. Like, I think he's usually, I mean, you hear him talk shit every once in a while. Clearly he was getting absolutely dogged by Conor, and I mean, shit, it's the intro to this is RDA getting dogged by Conor. But you know, he's always well-spoken, always very nice, always respectful. But dude is Mr. Fundamentals, and when it comes to this, like, he's like the original, like, I'd say like him and like Henan Barea, like, those boys, like, at the time, they just never spoke, but they were just so, and I know Henan Barea didn't age as well as RDA did, but like, dude, RDA was just so, just fundamental everywhere, like, just so well-rounded in everything. He was like the first, like, official like MMA fighter I'd want to say. Like, I know I'm missing a couple guys, but he is one of the trailblazers, that's for fucking sure. Like, he's one of the Mavericks to start the thing, you know. So it's, you got to respect him in the sport. And I think Bryan Barberena, I think the man, he's as high as confident as you could possibly be right now. He's got full momentum. I think he does have the chance to get it done. And if he does, you're gonna see me calling from the sky saying that man is 05 Randy Orton legend killer. And I'm fucking excited, man. These fights are getting fucking great. I'm loving it. The UFC is doing what they're doing, and I'm loving the fuck out of it. But, man, Bryan Barberena deserves this moment. I hope he fucking wins. And even if he doesn't, man, he's already taken out, like, 5 fucking guys. And I know Matt Brown's probably going to fight one more time. I know Robbie Lawler's going to fight one more time. But, like, he did technically beat these legends at the end of their career, and they're, you know, it's almost like they lost to Bryan Barberena. For those guys are like, okay, you know, like I just don't have it anymore. Because to be fair, Robbie Lawler, I don't think Bryan Barberena could. He's gonna touch him technically, but I don't think he could technically touch him in a full fight where he's like, oh, okay, you're gonna win. Like, no, he would have never got close to beating Robbie Lawler. I think even Matt Brown back in the day probably would have gave it to him. Jake Ellenberger would have been a great fight, but still, it's not Bryan Barberena's fault for the time that these things get matched up. So, dude, I'm excited for this fight night. Bryan Barberena, if you ever see this, dude, shouts out to you. You're killer. You're literally the definition of guys that, you know, maybe doesn't win every fight and he's going to lose some, but he always brings it, always picks his head up, and always just keeps doing it, dude. Now, you can tell he loves life outside of the sport so much. So, dude, let's go, baby. 5th round, as always, Stephen Moustaris.